The dim light of the cafe flickered like a heartbeat, illuminating the worn wooden tables where the scent of rich, dark coffee mingled with fresh pastries, their buttery aroma curling into the air. Emma sat in the corner, her fingers tracing the delicate rim of her mug, each swirl of steam pulling her deeper into her thoughts. A world where time slipped away. Just then, the bell above the door chimed softly, and he walked in. Lucas, with his messy dark hair and those familiar, soulful eyes that seemed to hold stories untold. "I thought I'd find you here," he said, sliding into the chair opposite her, his voice a warm embrace against the chill of her solitude. Emma's heart fluttered, the tension in her chest easing as they exchanged knowing glances that whispered secrets only they understood. Outside, rain began to patter softly against the windows, echoing the rhythm of her heart, and she felt a spark, a connection that ignited with every shared laugh, every unspoken word. "You remember that summer at the lake?" Lucas continued, his smile a flash of nostalgia, and Emma could almost see the sun-drenched moments replaying in her mind, shimmering like the water they once swam in, their laughter echoing against the trees, kindred spirits finding solace in the world together. Amidst the hushed whispers of the Hogwarts library, where shadows danced beneath towering shelves of ancient tomes, Lila Ravenclaw pored over a hefty volume, its spine cracked from years of eager readers. The musty scent of parchment mingled with the faint aroma of enchanted ink, intoxicating the air as she traced her fingers along the intricate illustrations of mythical creatures. Sunlight filtered through the tall arched windows, casting a warm glow upon her tousled hair, which caught the light in a halo of chestnut waves. "Did you decipher the riddle of the Sphinx yet?" a voice teased from the next table, breaking her concentration. It was Felix, a fellow Ravenclaw, his eyes twinkling with mischief. She looked up, a smile creeping onto her lips. "Not yet," she replied, her heart racing with the thrill of challenge, "but I have a few theories brewing." She returned to her book, the words flowing like a river of knowledge, each sentence igniting her imagination. The echoes of students discussing spells and charms in the background felt distant, as if they were part of another world. Here, in this sanctuary of wisdom, Lila felt alive, a spark of curiosity dancing within her, urging her to unravel the mysteries of the magical realm before her. The air was thick with the musty scent of old parchment as Lila slipped between the towering shelves of the library, her heart racing with each hushed word that floated through the dimly lit aisles. "Have you heard about Tilly?" a voice whispered, trembling with both fear and fascination. Lila pressed herself against the cool wood, listening intently, her breath hitching as the words danced around her like the flickering shadows cast by the flickering candles. "They say she's chained to the desk, working until her fingers bleed," another voice chimed in, raw with indignation. Lila's pulse quickened, her thoughts swirling with images of the tiny creature, hunched and weary, amidst the endless stacks of books. She could almost see Tilly, her large, sorrowful eyes filled with unspoken stories hidden away from the world. "We must do something," the first voice urged, the desperate plea hanging like a spell in the air, igniting a flicker of resolve in Lila's chest. She bit her lip, her mind racing with the weight of the injustice, knowing she could no longer pretend not to hear. The library, usually a sanctuary of knowledge, felt like a prison, and in that moment Lila vowed to uncover the truth lurking within its shadows. A faint mustiness clung to the air, punctuated by the scent of ancient paper and spines cracked from years of sharing whispered tales. Lila slipped through the towering shelves of the library, each step stirring the dust motes that danced in the slanting light. The hushed murmurs of librarians floated like ghosts around her, their eyes perpetually fixed on the marble floors, as if they held secrets she yearned to uncover. She pressed her fingertips against the spines, feeling the textured leather that housed forgotten stories, and her heart raced with every soft thud of a step. "Tilly," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and trepidation. "Where are you hiding?" Her quest led her to the farthest corner of the establishment, where the shadows thickened and the shelves leaned forward as if conspiring to keep her from what she sought. Behind a row of encyclopedias, Lila discovered a loose floorboard, its edge peeling away like the layers of time itself. With a quick glance around, she knelt, prying it open to reveal a hollow space, dark, inviting, and filled with the promise of revelation. The heart of the library pulsed with her curiosity, each thrum echoing the unspoken stories left behind, the laughter, the tears, and the enigma of Tilly, waiting to be unveiled. As she pushed aside the dusty bookshelf, the musty smell of aged paper mingled with the faint scent of candle wax, and a creak echoed through the silence. The back wall of the library sighed open, revealing a hidden room dimly lit by flickering candles, their flames dancing against the stone walls. Shelves lined with worn tomes, their spines cracked and titles faded, beckoned her closer, whispering secrets of a world she had only imagined. "House elf rights," she murmured, her fingers tracing the embossed words on the cover of one particularly ancient book, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and anger. The air was thick with the weight of forgotten stories, tales of injustice and resilience that ignited a fire within her that she could no longer ignore. "How can they let this happen?" she gasped, her voice trembling as she pulled several volumes from the shelves, their pages crinkling softly beneath her touch. The room seemed to pulse with energy, drawing her into a mission she hadn't anticipated, her sense of justice finding its roots in the very stories that surrounded her, promising that change, however small, could start here in this hidden sanctuary of truth. Lila stepped deeper into the library's heart, the air thickening with an unsettling hum, a whispering chorus of secrets begging to be unearthed. Shadows flickered and danced along the walls, twisting and writhing like smoke from an unseen flame, as books suddenly burst from their shelves, pages fluttering wildly, casting frantic silhouettes against the dim light. She blinked, her breath caught in her throat, as a worn leather-bound tome flung itself open before her, ink swirling on the pages like a storm churning in the distance. "This isn't possible," she murmured, her voice trembling in the heavy silence, the scent of old parchment mingling with an acrid hint of something ancient, something alive. The whispers crescendoed, a cacophony of half-formed words weaving through the air, tugging at her consciousness, urging her to listen, to understand. The shadows settled, revealing a forgotten history, tales of enchantments and curses, of wizards and battles fought in long-lost realms. "Lila!" a soft voice echoed from the depths of the library, drawing her closer. "Are you ready to discover the truth?" Her heart raced, a blend of fear and exhilaration surging through her veins as she felt an unseen force beckoning her to dive deeper into the library's darkened secrets. The musty scent of old parchment filled the air as Lila weaved her way through the dimly lit library, shadows dancing across the walls with each flicker of the candlelight. Her heart raced, each thump echoing the urgency of her search, until finally she spotted Tilly. The little elf, with her delicate wings drooping like wilted petals, sat hunched over a mountain of dusty volumes, a cascade of forgotten stories surrounding her. Lila's breath caught in her throat, a mix of relief and concern washing over her. "Tilly," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath, as if the very air might shatter the fragile moment. Startled, Tilly looked up, her large, tear-brimmed eyes sparkling like dew-kissed leaves, yet shadowed with worry. "Lila," she murmured, her voice trembling like the last notes of a fading song. "I thought you'd forgotten me." The weight of Tilly's dejection settled heavily in Lila's chest, the flickering flames illuminating the elf's small frame, her hair a tangled mess of silvery strands. "Never," Lila breathed, sinking to her knees beside her. "I've been searching everywhere for you." The dusty tomes whispered secrets of ages past. But in that moment, all Lila could hear was the fragile heartbeat of hope, pulsing between them in the musty stillness of the library. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, mingling with the faint floral notes of wild daisies bending under the weight of the morning dew. Lila took a cautious step forward, her heart thrumming like a drum in her chest, as she spotted Tilly, curled beneath an overgrown patch of ferns, trembling like a leaf caught in a tempest. "It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you," Lila whispered, her voice soft as the whispering wind. Tilly's wide eyes glistened with fear, the sunlight catching the tear-streaked dirt on her cheeks, and Lila felt an ache in her chest, the kind that pulls you towards someone in need. The little girl flinched, shrinking deeper into her hiding place. But Lila knelt down, the cool soil pressing into her knees as she reached out a hand, palm upturned, a gesture of peace. "I promise. I just want to help," she murmured, her voice steady, imbued with sincerity. Slowly, Tilly's breaths began to even out, the wild flicker of anxiety in her gaze softening as Leela's warmth enveloped her like a gentle embrace. "You can trust me," Lila encouraged, her fingers trembling slightly as they brushed against Tilly's, sparking an unspoken understanding between them. A fragile bond born from vulnerability and kindness, shimmering like fragile sunlight through the leaves above. Tilly stood amidst the towering shelves, dust motes dancing in the slants of muted light filtering through the stained glass windows, each color casting a spell on the worn wooden floors. A scent of aged paper and leather bindings enveloped her like a shroud, a bittersweet reminder of the stories she had longed to share but never could. Every morning I awaken to these pages, yet I remain trapped. Just a whisper in the silence, she sighed, her voice barely rising above the hush of the library. The weight of centuries hung heavy on her shoulders, her once vibrant spirit dulled by years of unending servitude. She brushed her fingers against her spine, feeling the grooves beneath her touch, each title a promise unfulfilled. You think you know the tales, but they're shackles binding me here, she murmured, gazing at the endless labyrinth that had become her prison. Outside, laughter echoed, a cacophony of freedom she could only dream of while she remained a ghost, bound to the knowledge that she could never escape the walls that held her. If only someone would listen, Tilly whispered, longing for a kindred soul to understand her plight, her heart aching with the weight of unshared tales, eternally waiting for a listener to unlock her prison of parchment and ink. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and wildflowers as Lila sat cross-legged beside Tilly, the once vibrant elf whose emerald hair now lay dull and lifeless against her frail shoulders. Each word Tilly spoke felt like a stone dropped into the depths of Lila's heart, rippling with echoes of longing and despair. "I used to be the heart of the forest, you know," Tilly whispered, her voice a brittle thread woven between memories and sorrow. "But duty, it's a chain, unyielding and cold." Leela felt her own chest tighten, recalling the suffocating weight of her mother's expectations, the relentless drumbeat of responsibility that had left her breathless. Sunlight filtered through the canopy above, casting dappled patterns on Tilly's skin, yet the warmth felt distant, as if it belonged to another world. "You don't have to bear it alone," Leela murmured, her throat thick with unspoken words, as if saying them aloud might shatter the delicate balance of their shared burdens. Tilly met her gaze, the depths of her sorrow momentarily flickering with a glimmer of hope, fragile but real, like the first hints of dawn breaking through a long, dark night. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and old wood, a grounding reminder of the home that enveloped Lila as she stood in the flickering light of the hearth, her heart racing against the quietude of the evening. Tilly, with her large, soulful eyes brimming with unwept tears, sat hunched in the corner, her fingers twisting the frayed edges of her worn apron. "It's not right, Lila," she whispered, her voice a fragile thread, "to be bound to a life of service." With each word, Leela felt a swell of determination rise within her, a tide of righteous fury washing over the doubts that had lingered like shadows. "We can change this," she declared, her voice firm, shaking the dust from the air. "I promise. I will find a way to grant you your freedom." Tilly's eyes flickered with a mix of hope and fear, and the flicker of candlelight danced upon the walls, casting their resolve in sharp relief against the encroaching darkness. The weight of her unyielding promise settled heavily in Lila's chest. An unbreakable bond forged from empathy and courage, as she envisioned a world where Tilly could walk unshackled, her laughter echoing freely through the sunlit halls of the home they shared. Lila slipped into the musty archives of the library, the scent of aged parchment and dust swirling around her like a forgotten memory. Rows of towering shelves loomed overhead, their spines cracked and faded, whispering secrets of times long past. She brushed her fingers along the leather-bound tomes, feeling the weight of history in every crack and crease, and the dim light flickered overhead, casting shadows that danced like spectres. "Where are you hiding?" she murmured, her voice barely a whisper, as if the very walls might betray her search. With a sigh, she settled at a heavy wooden table, its surface scarred from years of use, the grains etched with stories of those who had come before her. Leela spread open a dusty volume, the pages fragile and yellowed, revealing letters scrawled in elegant script, legal jargon intertwining with pleas for freedom and dignity. Her heart raced as she absorbed the words. The legalese often felt like a foreign language, but beneath it lay a tapestry of injustice that ignited a fire within her. "They deserve better," she whispered fiercely, determination blooming as she scribbled notes, her quill scratching against the parchment, each stroke a step closer to unraveling the truth. The library's shelves loomed tall and shadowy, their ancient tomes whispering secrets of ages past, as Ilara pressed her palms against the cool, worn wood of the table, heart racing. Professor Thorne, draped in his flowing emerald robes, peered at her over his round spectacles, eyes twinkling like distant stars. "You seek Tilly's freedom, dear girl?" he asked, his voice a rich harmony of curiosity and concern. With a deep breath she nodded, the weight of her mission coiling in her chest like a tightly wound spring. "Then we must tread carefully," he continued, punctuating his words with the soft flutter of feathers as a raven landed on his shoulder, its inky plumage glistening like polished obsidian. The creature cawed softly, as if echoing Ilara's own fears. "It's not merely the spells that bind her. It's the trust that must be forged," he said, his tone turning grave, yet reassuring. Ilara's resolve strengthened, the flickering candles casting dancing shadows around them as she felt the warmth of hope seep into her bones. "Teach me," she whispered, her voice just above a breath. "I'll do whatever it takes." A knowing smile spread across Professor Thorne's face as he gestured for her to join him, the scent of aged parchment and the promise of ancient wisdom enveloping her like a comforting embrace. Lila stood at the threshold of the dusty, book-laden library, her heart racing as Professor Thorne's voice echoed around her, a stern warning breaking through the musty scent of ancient parchment. You must understand, Lila, the laws governing house elves are intricate and often overlooked, he said, his silver spectacles glinting in the dim light, the shadows casting a dramatic air around him. She could feel the weight of his gaze, heavy with the responsibility of knowledge pressing down on her shoulders. Around them, the shelves creaked with the knowledge of ages, their spines cracked and faded, whispering secrets she desperately wanted to uncover. Leela clenched her fists, the chill of anticipation nibbling at her fingertips. "But Professor," she interjected, her voice trembling slightly, "what if we can help them?" A flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly masked by furrowed brows and a sigh, the air thick with unspoken history. "Help, yes," he replied, his gaze drifting to the cobwebbed corners of the room. "But at what cost? Ignoring the laws can lead to dire consequences." A shiver ran down her spine, the thrill of adventure mingling with the fear of the unknown as Lila stepped closer, determined to unravel the mystery and face whatever lay ahead. Leela stood in the dim glow of the Ravenclaw common room, the air thick with the scent of parchment and beeswax candles, her heart pounding as she faced her friends. "We have to help Tilly," she urged, her voice trembling with urgency. "She's been treated unfairly. No one deserves this." The flicker of candlelight danced across their faces, revealing a mixture of concern and determination. Rowan, his brow furrowed, leaned forward, the silver of his glasses catching the light. "But what can we do? It feels so insurmountable." Lila could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes. She took a breath, desperation clawing at her throat. "We're Ravenclaws, Rowan. We're meant to fight for what's just, to use our knowledge for good." The room buzzed with murmurs, the warmth of camaraderie swirling like the soft rustle of pages turning. Felicity's voice piped up, steady and resolute. "If we pool our resources, we can figure something out. We can't let the injustice stand." A spark ignited in Lila's chest, igniting the others as they leaned closer, the shadows receding, their resolve solidifying like a shield against the darkness encroaching on Tilly's fate. The flickering candlelight cast playful shadows on the walls as the group's hushed voices wrapped around them like a comforting blanket, each story sparking warmth and connection. "I still remember the look on her face," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet filled with a radiant energy, "when I handed her that warm meal. It was like I had given her the world." The scent of cinnamon and fresh coffee lingered in the air, blending with the hearty laughter that punctuated their memories, stitching them closer together. Marcus leaned forward, his brow furrowing in thought. "You think a simple act can change someone's life?" he asked. The sincerity in his eyes inviting a chorus of nods. The soft crackle of the fire echoed their shared resolve, and they each felt the pulse of purpose swell within the circle. "I've seen it happen," Jenna replied, her voice trembling with emotion. "A smile can be the light someone needs to keep going." As the evening deepened, the stories flowed like an unbroken river, each tale adding a layer to their collective spirit, a tapestry woven with kindness and service, fostering a bond that felt unshakable, as if they were all threads stitched into the very fabric of hope itself. In the flickering candlelight of the hidden alcove, shadows danced across the stone walls, mirroring the urgency in their hearts. Eleanor leaned closer, her breath quickening as she whispered, "The enchantment must be woven under the full moon, when its light can pierce through the darkness surrounding her." Lucas, eyes alight with determination, nodded, his fingers brushing the ancient scroll that lay between them, its surface rough and worn by time. "We'll need the essence of nightshade and the tears of a moonflower, both rare," he mused, the weight of their task settling upon him like a shroud. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and sweet incense as Eleanor closed her eyes, envisioning Tilly's smile, the way it lit up the gloomiest days. "We can't fail her, Lucas. She's counting on us," she breathed, a tremor of both fear and hope threading through her voice. Outside, the wind howled like a restless spirit, but within the alcove they found a flicker of courage, crafting their plan with a fervor that enveloped them, each word a spell, each glance a promise. In that moment, the world shrank to the dimensions of their resolve, and they could almost hear Tilly's laughter, sweet and free, echoing through the midnight air. Tilly stood at the threshold of the grand library, the heavy wooden doors creaking open as if whispering her name, inviting her to step inside. The scent of aged parchment and polished oak wrapped around her like a comforting cloak, mingling with the faint trace of dust motes dancing in the beams of golden sunlight filtering through the tall arched windows. Rows upon rows of books, their spines worn and titles faded, seemed to lean closer, urging her forward, as if the very essence of their stories whispered promises of freedom and adventure. She could almost hear their silent cheers, a cacophony of hope mingling with her nervous heartbeat. "Today's the day," she whispered to herself, biting her lip as she ran her fingers along the spines, feeling the textured leather beneath her fingertips, grounding her amidst the swirling uncertainty. The soft rustle of pages turning echoed in the stillness, a reminder of the lives lived and lost within these walls. "You can do this, Tilly," she murmured, her voice barely above a breath, buoyed by the weight of the library's history and the flickering candlelight that cast shadows like old friends. It was as if the very air held its breath, waiting for her to make her choice. A choice that could shatter or liberate, forever altering the course of her story. The heavy wooden door creaked open, its sound echoing in the dimly lit library, a space thick with the scent of ancient parchment and musty tomes. Shadows danced along the towering shelves as if the very books were holding their breath. The librarian, a formidable figure draped in dark robes that whispered ominously with each movement, turned slowly, her sharp gaze piercing through the gloom. Her silver hair, bound tightly, framed a face etched with authority, while her fingers, adorned with rings that gleamed like watchful eyes, tapped rhythmically against the desk, a silent challenge. "You dare disturb my sanctuary?" she hissed, lips curling into a sneer that revealed a disdain for the young intruders who dared oppose her. "We're not leaving until you understand." One student, a wiry girl with fiery determination in her eyes, stepped forward, her voice quaking yet fierce. "That house elves deserve respect, not servitude." The others murmured their agreement, hearts racing with the thrill of defiance, the weight of centuries pressing down upon them. The librarian narrowed her eyes, her lips twitching into a smirk that spoke of unyielding power. "You think your words can change a lifetime of tradition? How quaint." The tension crackled in the air, thick enough to taste, masking the fragile hope that flickered like a candle in the darkness. The heavy oak door creaked open, revealing the dimly lit library, its shelves a labyrinth of dusty tomes and whispered secrets. Ilara stood before the imposing figure of the librarian, her heart pounding as she clutched the worn parchment detailing the plight of the elves, their freedom stifled by centuries of oppression. "You must understand," she implored, her voice trembling yet resolute. "They deserve a chance to choose their fate." The librarian, tall and draped in a cascade of emerald robes, adjusted her spectacles, the glass reflecting a glint of disdain. "Child, naivete drapes you like a thin veil," she retorted, her voice as cold as the marble floor beneath Ellora's feet. "Elves are best left to their roles, their spirits ensnared within the confines of duty." The air thickened with tension, Ilara's desperation mingling with the musty scent of parchment, vibrant memories flickering like candle flames in her mind. "But they have dreams, hopes," she pressed, her fingers brushing against the spines of ancient books, seeking solace. "You can't imprison their hearts." The librarian turned away, the weight of her dismissal echoing like a funeral. The bell, leaving Ilara standing in a sea of shadows, resolute yet adrift, knowing that the fight for freedom was only just beginning. Lila's heart thundered in her chest as she stood, the weight of the room's expectations pressing down like an iron shroud, her voice breaking through the murmurs. "Tilly deserves to choose her own path," she exclaimed, her words slicing through the thick tension. The scent of polished wood and stale coffee filled the air, mingling with the nervous energy that rippled around her. She could feel the heat rising to her cheeks, the sharp gaze of their elders boring into her, but she couldn't back down now. The truth swelled in her throat like a wildfire. "How can you decide for her? What gives you that right?" The faces of those seated shifted, some frowning in disapproval, while others whispered amongst themselves, their reactions a mix of curiosity and disdain. Tilly sat across the table, eyes wide with a mixture of gratitude and fear, her fingers trembling against the surface, the light glinting off her ring, an emblem of dreams unvoiced. "Lila, please," she murmured, but the spark ignited within Lila, illuminating the shadows of doubt. "No, Tilly, this is your life. You should be the one to choose. No one else can live it for you." The room fell silent, the air thick with anticipation, as Lila's words hung there, a fragile but fierce declaration of freedom. The crisp autumn air hung heavy with tension as the leaves danced restlessly around them, fluttering like anxious butterflies. Lila's friend Ethan shifted his weight back and forth, his brow furrowed with doubt, the faint scent of fading wood smoke swirling around him. "What if they find out?" he whispered, his voice barely rising above the rustle of leaves, his eyes darting nervously to the looming figure of their principal, oblivious and wrapped in his own world. The thrill of rebellion, potent and intoxicating, coursed through Lila's veins, but Ethan's hesitance dulled the rush, turning it into a heavy weight that settled in her stomach. She could see the conflict etched into his face, the fear mingling with the desire for change, and she reached out, clasping his hand, her pulse quickening. "We can't keep letting them control us," she urged, their breaths mingling in the cool air. "Think about it. What if this is our chance?" Ethan's gaze fell to the ground, the crunch of leaves beneath his shoes echoing his uncertainty. "It's not just about us, Lila. It's about everything," he murmured, the flicker of resolve battling against the shadows of doubt. The world around them seemed to hold its breath, waiting for a decision that felt more monumental than any of them realized. Lila stood on the edge of the dimly lit room, the cold air prickling her skin as Tilly's soft whimpers echoed against the peeling walls, a sound that twisted like a knife in her gut. The shadows danced around them, flickering in rhythm with the old faulty bulb above, casting a haunting glow on Tilly's tear-streaked face, eyes wide and pleading, the weight of her sorrow heavier than any physical change. "Please, Lila," she whispered, voice trembling, "I can't do it alone." The doubt gnawed at Lila's insides, a relentless storm of uncertainty swirling in her mind. But when Tilly's gaze met hers, hope flickered beneath the despair, bright and fragile. The faint scent of damp earth wafted through the cracked window, mingling with the metallic taste of fear on Lila's tongue, and she clenched her fists, feeling the pulse of her own heartbeat drown out to the murmurs of self-doubt. "What if I fail?" she thought. But Tilly's silent cry for help cut through the fog, shattering her hesitation like glass. She inhaled deeply, tasting the resolve in the air, and stepped closer, determination igniting within her. "I won't let you down," Lila vowed quietly, grounding herself in the strength of that small promise, ready to confront the storm that lay ahead. Lila stood before the librarian, her heart racing, the scent of aged paper and polished wood mingling in the air, forming a cocoon of history that wrapped around her like a comforting blanket. The dim glow from the hanging lights flickered softly, casting shadows that danced across the rows of silent tomes. But it was the fire in Lila's amber eyes that caught the librarian's attention, thawing the frost of her initial indifference. "I know how important this is," Lila murmured, her voice steady yet laced with urgency. "I need to prove myself, to find the truth." The librarian's fingers paused mid-stroke, a pencil smudged with graphite resting against her paper, and for the first time she met Lila's gaze, really met it and saw not just a girl, but a force of determination that pulsed with every breath. The librarian sighed, a reluctant sound, resonant with years of guarding knowledge and protecting the sanctuary of silence. "Very well," she finally conceded, her voice low and measured. "But you must understand. The path you're choosing is fraught with challenges." Lila nodded, her pulse quickening, a thrill of hope igniting within her as the librarian gestured toward a weathered volume resting on the edge of the table, its spine cracked, waiting to unveil secrets long buried. The dim light of the library flickered as Lila brushed her fingertips across the dust-covered shelves, her heart racing with each echoing footfall. She paused, drawn to a corner draped in shadows, where a peculiar creak whispered secrets of the past. With a gentle tug, she pried open an ancient tome, the spine cracking as if waking from a long slumber. Hidden behind its brittle pages, she discovered an elegantly rolled scroll, its parchment yellowed and delicate, the scent of musty history filling the air. As she unfurled it, the faded ink danced before her eyes. Words of rights and recognition, a legal sigh of freedom that sent shivers down her spine. "Can you believe this, Thistle?" she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper, the name slipping out like a prayer. The house elf, usually so quick to scurry away, peered over her shoulder, eyes wide with disbelief. "Mistress Leela, is it true?" Her pulse quickened, the implications swirling in her mind like leaves caught in a tempest. This wasn't just a forgotten law. It was a lifeline, a promise of dignity and respect long denied. Lila felt a fierce determination bloom within her chest, igniting a spark of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, she could change their world forever. Her heart raced as she approached the towering shelves, the scent of aged parchment and dust swirling in the air, a fragrance both comforting and daunting. The librarian, with her perpetually furrowed brow and spectacles perched precariously on the edge of her nose, was ensconced within a fortress of books. "You're back," she muttered, her voice thick with skepticism as she glanced up from a heavy tome. "And with what, another wild tale?" "No," she replied breathlessly, unfurling the scroll with trembling hands, the crackling parchment whispering secrets of its own. The intricate lettering danced under the flickering candlelight, golden ink shimmering as if imbued with life. This is real. It's the key to the lost archives." A flicker of interest softened the librarian's features, her eyes narrowing as she inspected the scroll, the rigid lines of her mouth twitching, ever so slightly, upwards. "I've seen many things come and go," she said, her voice still laced with doubt, though a spark of curiosity ignited beneath her stern exterior. "But if this is true, it could change everything." The hope swelling within her chest felt palpable, almost electric, as the librarian's fingers brushed the parchment, the weight of possibility hanging in the air like a fragile thread ready to snap or weave an entirely new destiny. The flickering candlelight danced across the stone walls of the ancient grotto, illuminating the motes of dust that drifted lazily in the air, while the fragrant scent of lavender and crushed sage enveloped the small circle where they gathered. Lila's hands trembled as she measured out powdered moonstone, the pale grains glimmering like starlight in her palms. "Do you think this will work?" she murmured, glancing at Jasper, whose brow furrowed with concern. He nodded, though doubt shadowed his eyes. "It has to," he replied softly, his voice barely. Above a whisper, as he unfurled a tattered scroll filled with incantations, the ink still glistening with the essence of forgotten realms. The air thickened with anticipation, a palpable energy radiating from the center of their makeshift altar, where a small silver locket lay, the last remnant of Tilly's essence. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across their faces, the group formed a tight circle, hands linked, hearts pounding, a mix of fear and hope swirling in their chests. "On my mark," Jasper said, his voice steady now as he prepared to utter the ancient words that could break the chains binding their friend, the weight of generations pressing upon them, a legacy of love and sacrifice. The clinking of glass jars filled with herbs and the rustle of parchment filled the air as Leela and her friends huddled in the back corner of the dusty library, their breath mingling with the musty scent of aging books. "We need more sage. It's essential for the protection spell," whispered Theo, his wide eyes darting toward the shadowy aisles. But just beyond the flickering candlelight, the librarian, Miss Wren, stood half hidden, her fingers drumming anxiously against leather-bound tome, her sharp ears pricking at their whispered plans. A sly smile crept across her lips as she cleared her throat, the sound echoing ominously between the shelves. "You know, dear ones," she called, her voice silky yet laced with sharp edges, "some herbs can be unreliable depending on their source. Rumor has it that the sage in this library has been cursed." Lila's heart sank, her pulse quickening as doubt crept into the eyes of her friends. "What if she's right?" murmured Mia, biting her lip, glancing nervously at the half-empty sack. Miss Wren relished the tension, her gaze penetrating, relentless. "Perhaps you should reconsider your choices. It's best not to tempt fate after all." The flickering candlelight wavered, casting shadows that danced around them, and Leela felt the weight of uncertainty descend like a shroud, threatening to unravel their mission. The heavy scent of ancient parchment and polished wood enveloped Dobby as he slipped into the library, his large, expressive eyes darting around the cavernous space, shimmering with excitement. Dust motes danced in the golden shafts of sunlight, streaming through tall, arched windows, illuminating the titles of countless tomes that lined the shelves like sentinels of knowledge, each whispering tales of adventures long past. "Maybe they will be friendly," he murmured to himself, his voice barely more than a breath, as he clutched a tattered book against his chest, its cover worn and reassuring. As he scuttled between the aisles, the sound of his footfalls, soft like the rustle of pages, echoed gently against the high ceiling. He paused beside a particularly grand volume, the spine engraved with glittering gold lettering, and felt a surge of longing, a desire for friendship, for belonging. "Hello," he called out suddenly, his voice ringing with a hopeful timbre as he spotted a couple of students huddled over a table. They looked up, surprise flickering across their faces. "I'm Dobby," he beamed, his ears perking up. "I come seeking friends." The students exchanged glances, their initial shock melting into curiosity. Curiosity that ignited a bright spark in Dobby's heart, warming him more than any spell ever could. The flickering glow of the fire cast dancing shadows across the gathered faces, illuminating Lila's furrowed brow as she listened to Dobby's melodic voice, warm and soothing like a gentle summer breeze. "You know," he began, his big, expressive eyes sparkling with a hint of mischief, "there was once a little house elf who dreamed of freedom just like you all." The air thickened with hope as the scent of wood smoke mingled with the crispness of pine, and Lila leaned in, captivated. "He had no grand tales of bravery," Dobby continued, a soft chuckle bubbling up. "Just a heart full of kindness and a belief that even the smallest spark can ignite a fire in the darkest of places." The group nestled closer, feeling the warmth of his words wrap around them like a comforting blanket, while the crackling fire punctuated his stories with bursts of energy. Lila's pulse quickened, her heart swelling with newfound courage as she whispered, "Do you really believe we can change our fates?" Dobby nodded, his voice unwavering. "Yes, Lila, for the true magic lies not in what you are, but in what you choose to become. Let kindness lead the way." And in that moment, amidst the symphony of the forest night, hope blossomed anew within them, bright and unyielding, as the flickering candlelight danced against the stone walls of the cramped room. Dobby's eyes sparkled with mischief and hope. "A new plan, yes." He squeaked, his excitement bubbling over like the cauldron on the hearth. The musty air was thick with the scent of old parchment and sweat, but Dobby's spirit brought a fresh breeze, teasing the hairs on Tilly's arms. She leaned closer, heart pounding, as he unrolled a tattered scroll, the ink faded, but the words pulsing with promise. "There's a charm, a forgotten one that needs something pure, something kind," he whispered, his voice a conspiratorial thread woven into the tapestry of desperation surrounding them. Tilly's breath caught, her mind racing with possibilities, longing to feel the sun on her face once more. "But what kind of act?" she asked, her voice trembling, the raw weight of their plight pressing down like lead. Dobby grinned, a glimmer of mischief in his eyes. "A selfless act, Tilly, from the heart. We must find a way to show them kindness, even in the depths of despair." The gravity of his words settled between them, heavy yet luminous, until he felt an ember of hope ignite within her, flickering bravely against the encroaching darkness. The air hung thick with tension as Tilly stood at the edge of the sun-dappled glade. the scent of pine needles and damp earth swirling around her like a cloak, cocooning her in a familiar yet unsettling embrace. Lila, just a few steps away, her hands raised in a gesture meant to be calming, looked both earnest and vulnerable, the late afternoon sun casting shadows across her face, highlighting the sincerity in her eyes. "You have to trust me, Tilly," she whispered, her voice trembling like the leaves overhead. "I promise I won't hurt you." But the weight of her past pressed down like a stone, memories of betrayal flooding her mind, each one a jagged shard, cutting deeper into her resolve. The birds, normally joyous, fell silent, as if holding their breath. And Tilly's heart raced, caught between the urge to flee and the longing to believe. "How can you ask that of me?" she finally replied, her voice barely a whisper, laced with doubt, as she fought against the instinct to turn away. Lila took a hesitant step forward, the grass crunching beneath her feet. "Because I'm standing here, and I'm not going anywhere. Please, just give me a chance." The sun dipped lower, casting a golden hue over them, as Tilly exhaled slowly, the decision looming over her like the weight of the sky. Lila knelt beside Tilly, the cool grass damp beneath her knees, the scent of earth and moss thick in the air as they sat beneath the sprawling oak, its leaves whispering secrets in the breeze. "You know," Lila began softly, her voice a mere murmur against the rustling foliage, "I used to feel so lost, like I was drifting on a river with no shore in sight." Tilly glanced up, her tear-streaked face illuminated by dappled sunlight, and Lila felt a rush of warmth surge through her, a familiar ache of empathy. "When my mum left, I thought I'd never find my way back," she confessed, her words trembling like the leaves above. Tilly's breath hitched, the vulnerability hanging between them like a delicate thread. "But then I realized," Lila continued, brushing a stray hair from Tilly's forehead, "that it's okay to not be okay, that sharing your pain can be the first step to healing." A flicker of understanding sparked in Tilly's eyes, the tension in her shoulders easing just a bit as she wrapped her fingers around Lila's. "You really mean that?" she whispered, vulnerability mingling with hope, and Viola nodded, their bond forging stronger, a sanctuary amidst the chaos of their lives. The flickering glow of the campfire cast dancing shadows on the surrounding trees, their leaves rustling softly in the cool night breeze. Laughter erupted from the group as Mia recounted the time they nearly lost the map to a particularly greedy raccoon, her expressive hands painting the picture of their frantic chase. "I swear, that little bandit had the speed of a deer," she exclaimed, wiping away tears of mirth. Nearby, Sam was busy sorting through a tangle of ropes and flashlights, his brow furrowed in concentration, but he couldn't resist joining in. "And you thought it was a treasure hunt, didn't you?" The warmth of companionship enveloped them, palpable against the chill of the encroaching night, as they packed their supplies with a renewed sense of purpose. The scent of pine mingled with the smoke from the fire, grounding them in this sacred moment where each shared story wove their destinies closer together. Anna, her fingers deftly tying knots, smiled at them, whispering, "No matter what happens, we'll find our way." The promise hung in the air, infused with the thrill of adventure, their collective heartbeat sinking as the stars blinked into existence, each one a witness to their resolve. The air thrummed with an electric energy, books stacked like ancient sentinels around them, their spines whispering secrets only the two could understand. As Ilara traced her fingers over the parchment of a forgotten tome, letters shimmered in gold, dancing before her eyes, while a warm breeze, seemingly conjured from nowhere, fluttered through the aisles, rustling pages like laughter. "Can you feel it?" Nico asked, his voice barely above a whisper, the thrill of discovery making his heart race. Ilara nodded, her breath catching in her throat, overwhelmed by the library's palpable heartbeat, the gentle thrum of magic that urged them onward, deeper into its depths. Each step they took echoed with promise, shadows flickering along the walls, as if the very fabric of the library was alive, urging them to unravel its mysteries. Dust motes spiraled in the golden light that streamed through tall, arched windows, casting a spell of tranquility that soothed their worries. "This place knows our purpose," she replied, a smile breaking across her face, her resolve hardening like iron. Just then, a distant echo of laughter resonated, not from their lips, but from the very shelves, as if the library itself rejoiced in their quest, binding them to its ancient legacy. The heavy oak doors of the library creaked ominously as they pushed them open, the musty scent of ancient parchment and polished wood enveloping them like a shroud. Sunlight streamed through the tall, stained glass windows, casting vibrant patterns on the cold marble floor, yet an oppressive gloom hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Mia clutched her leather satchel tightly, her heart racing with every echoing footstep, while Jonah's fingers trembled nervously against the spine of a dusty tome, its title long obscured by age. "What if we're too late?" he whispered, glancing at the towering shelves, lined with secrets that seemed to breathe, watching them with silent judgment. Ilara, her heart pounding in her chest like a war drum, silenced him with a determined glare. "We have to face this. No turning back now." Shadows danced along the walls, blending with the whispers of forgotten lore as they approached the central table where a tattered scroll lay unfurled, waiting for their touch, as if it too could sense the weight of their choices. The air crackled with tension, each moment stretching into eternity, binding them to the fateful path they had chosen, their destinies entwined in that sacred, hallowed space. The musty scent of old pages and polished wood enveloped them as they stepped into the dimly lit corner of the library, where the flickering light of a lone desk lamp struggled against the creeping shadows. The librarian, a stern figure with silver glasses perched at the tip of her nose, peered over the top of a well-worn tome, her expression a tempest of skepticism and concern. "What did you say about Dobby?" she asked, her voice a low, gravelly hiss, each word heavy with the weight of her disbelief. The air thickened with tension as they exchanged glances, nerves prickling at the edges of their resolve. I can explain, they stammered, the words tumbling out like errant leaves in a gust of wind. It's not what it seems. We were just trying to what? She interjected, her eyes narrowing, accusatory, as if she could read their very thoughts. The faint rustle of paper filled the silence between them, punctuated only by the distant echo of footsteps in the hall. Outside, rain began to patter against the windows, drumming an anxious tune that mirrored their racing hearts. You must understand, I can't allow anyone to disturb the peace of this place, she warned, her gaze unyielding, but beneath that steely exterior, they glimpsed a flicker of fear, a hint of empathy buried deep within the librarian's guarded heart. Leela stood atop the weathered stone steps of the old campus amphitheater, her voice cutting through the cool afternoon air, vibrant and resolute. We deserve a fair trial of our cause, she declared, each word reverberating like a drumbeat against the hushed crowd, her chest rising and falling with the fervor of her conviction. The scent of autumn leaves mingled with a hint of desperation, as students, bundled in their jackets, leaned closer, their faces lit with curiosity, some nodding subtly, others whispering encouragement. If we don't fight for our rights, who will? She could feel the weight of their gazes, the flicker of hope igniting as she continued. We're not just voices lost in the wind, we are the future. A small group near the front exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from indifference to intrigue, eyes widening as Lila's passion enveloped them, pulling them into her orbit. Let's stand together, she urged, her heart racing, the sunlight casting a golden hue around her, illuminating the spark of solidarity beginning to bloom amongst them. The murmurs grew, a swell of determination rising, and Lila smiled. The once quiet amphitheater alive with the sound of budding resolve, the whispers of support swirling around her like the leaves in the brisk breeze. The sun dipped low outside the library's ancient stained glass windows, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across the dusty wooden floor. Dust motes danced in the golden light as the librarian, clad in a deep emerald shawl, her spectacles perched precariously on the tip of her nose, fixed her piercing gaze on the group huddled before her. You think you understand kindness, she said, her voice a calm storm. But can it truly shatter the stone walls of tradition? A ripple of anxiety passed through the students, their hearts pounding like a distant drum. Prove it, she continued, gesturing to the towering shelves lined with tomes, each containing tales of judgment and age-old customs. A heavy silence enveloped them, thick as the lingering scent of old parchment and ink. Start today, she challenged, an eyebrow raised. Find someone outside these walls, someone bound by the past, and extend your hand. The air crackled with urgency as whispers erupted. Who and how? Their breaths mingled, the thrill of impending connection mingling with the weight of expectation, each eye searching the others for courage, for a spark to ignite the flame of change. The air was thick with anticipation, every corner of the grand library echoing with whispered speculation as students and professors gathered, their faces alight with curiosity and apprehension. Luminous chandeliers cast shimmering shadows across the polished wooden tables, where stacks of ancient tomes seemed to watch, their spines quivering with the energy of the unfolding spectacle. At the center, the podium was draped in silken cloth, vibrant colors fluttering like trapped spirits, while the scent of aged parchment and fresh ink mingled in a heady concoction that hung heavily in the room. "I can't believe they're doing this here," a voice piped up, quaking with a blend of excitement and dread. "What if it goes wrong?" The murmurs rippled through the crowd, creating a palpable wave of tension as the lead professor, her robes billowing like storm clouds, stepped up to address the gathering. "Today," she began, her voice strong yet quivering with emotion, "we seek not just truth, but the very essence of freedom." A hush fell as she raised an ancient artifact, its surface glimmering, resonating with the power of countless secrets. In that moment, every heartbeat became a drum, every breath a prayer, and the gravity of the trial wrapped around them like an enchanted shroud, promising both revelations and reckoning. The autumn wind whispered through the cracked sidewalks as Lila stood hesitantly outside the worn-out shelter, its paint peeling like the dreams of those who once called it home. The air smelled of damp earth and fading hope, yet her heart, a wild thrum of uncertainty, urged her forward. With each step through the creaking door, a wave of warmth washed over her, filled with the mingling sense of coffee and desperation. "Can you help me with my homework?" A small voice piped from the back, a timid girl with pigtails peering out from beneath a frayed blanket. Lila swallowed hard, the words stalling on her tongue, fear battling against a flicker of compassion. Just then, her eyes landed on an elderly man, alone at a table, his hands trembling around a chipped mug. "Please, can you sit with me?" he rasped, a tremor of loneliness threading through his voice. A gentle challenge unfurled before her, pulling at the strings of her conscience. As she approached, the faint echo of her own doubts faded, replaced by the warmth of connection, the weight of understanding, and she realized that true kindness often grows in the cracks of discomfort, blooming into something beautiful. As twilight draped the park in hues of amber and violet, laughter danced between the trees, weaving a tapestry of camaraderie. Mia stepped forward first, her hands cradling a small, weathered box, the lid adorned with stickers from childhood adventures. "Remember these?" she asked, a warm smile spreading across her face as she revealed a collection of hand-painted rocks, each one bearing a word of encouragement. Brave, loved, dream. The air thickened with nostalgia, and the friends stepped closer, their eyes glistening with shared memories, their hearts swelling with the weight of unsaid gratitude. Next, Lucas held up a guitar, its strings worn yet resilient, the sound of a strummed chord resonating like a heartbeat in the gathering dusk. "Here's to all our late-night jam sessions," he laughed, his voice rich with warmth, inviting others to join in. One by one, they showcased their gestures. Jasmine pulled out a sketchbook filled with drawings that captured their finest moments, while Omar shared a playlist, each song a thread binding their stories together. "You guys are my family," he said, the sincerity in his tone silencing the chatter. The world faded around them, the laughter, the music, the colors of the sky, all blending into one radiant truth. Kindness, like friendship, is a tapestry woven from the simplest of threads. The crowd, a sea of eager faces, hung on every word as Dobby stood on the makeshift stage, his large, expressive eyes shimmering with the light of countless torches flickering around him. "Kindness," he began, his voice a melodic tremor that danced through the evening air, "is like a gentle breeze that whispers to the heart, reshaping it in unexpected ways." He gestured widely, his small hands weaving the air into silken threads of hope, drawing the audience into his world of transformation. Their breaths caught in their throats as Darby recounted his journey, a life once bound by chains, now free, like the stars unraveling above. Him. "When I found kindness," he continued, his voice rising with fervor, "I found myself. I was no longer just a house elf, I was Dobby." The crowd erupted in applause, the sound swelling like a tidal wave, washing over him, invigorating him. He could feel their warmth, their belief, wrapping around him like a comforting blanket. "Together," he urged, his tone dipping to a conspiratorial whisper, "we can plant seeds of kindness and watch them bloom into a garden of freedom." Each word was laden with conviction, and as he spoke, the air thickened with the unmistakable scent of change, a promise shimmering just on the horizon. As the flickering overhead lights cast long shadows across the rows of dusty tomes, the air grew thick with unspoken tension, a palpable energy crackling like static. The librarian, her silver hair a stark contrast to the rich mahogany of the shelves, squared her shoulders, her piercing gaze locking onto the group gathered at the table, their youthful faces flushed with passion. "Tradition," she began, her voice steady yet resonant, "is not merely an echo of the past. It is the foundation upon which we build our future." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of every whispered story, every dog-eared page, as she gestured toward the ancient volumes surrounding them, their spines cracked and faded, yet filled with the wisdom of generations. Loyalty to our heritage, to the values we cherish, is not an anchor weighing us down, but a compass guiding us forward. She let the silence envelop them, swallowing her arguments whole, her heart pounding in rhythm with the soft ticking of the clock, as one resolute voice piped up, breaking the spell. "But what if our compass is faulty, Monsieur Hargrove?" The question hung, shimmering in the air, daring her to fight back, to navigate these turbulent waters of change. The flickering candlelight danced on the stone walls, casting elongated shadows that seemed to mock her indecision. Lila's heart raced, a wild drum in her chest as she stood at the nexus of her fate, the air thick with the scent of aged parchment and fresh ink. She glanced at the gathered townsfolk, their eyes glistening with anticipation, whispering her name like a prayer. "What do I do?" she murmured, her voice barely rising above the rustling of ancient pages. The scroll, hidden away in the librarian's office, held the key to breaking the curse that had gripped her village for generations. Yet the trial loomed like a storm cloud overhead, threatening to consume her spirit. She could almost hear the scroll's whispers, seductive and urgent, beckoning her to abandon the charade of civility and seize her destiny. Resolute, Lila took a deep breath, the musty air filling her lungs, grounding her in the moment. "I can't let them down," she whispered, clenching her fists, determination flaring in her chest. The librarian's office loomed just ahead, a fortress of knowledge. And with a fierce resolve, Lila pushed through the crowd, her heart surging as she stormed towards destiny, each step echoing with the promise of change. Lila stood before the crowd, her heart racing like a wild bird in a cage, the warmth of the afternoon sun wrapping around her like an embrace. Yet it was the knot in her stomach that felt most alive. She glanced at the sea of faces, the hopeful, the weary, the curious, and drew a deep breath, the crisp air filling her lungs, grounding her. "Each day," she began, her voice trembling but gaining strength, "we are faced with choices, moments where we can be the light or succumb to the shadows." The murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience, a gentle wave of support. Lila's eyes sparkled with unshed tears, memories of kindness washing over her like a tide at a simple act, holding a door, sharing a smile. But it can change the course of someone's day or even their life. She could see nods echoing her sentiment, feel the energy shift, their hearts resonating with hers. "Remember," she continued, her passion igniting, "kindness is a choice we make every single time." The sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow around her as she concluded. "So let's choose to be kind, fiercely, loudly, because in the end, it's our choices that echo through time." The silence that followed was thick with understanding, a collective vow hanging in rhythm with the distant drumbeat of the gathering storm. The air thick with an electric tension as the clouds churned overhead, casting deep shadows across the landscape. The vibrant greens of the forest around her seemed to pulse with life, each leaf whispering secrets she longed to hear. And in that stillness, she could almost taste the promise of change. A rustle broke the silence, a flickering movement just beyond the tree line. Her breath caught in her throat, a fragile tremor of anticipation coursing through her veins. "Is it really you?" she whispered hoarsely, the question barely escaping her lips, her fingers tightening around the pendant hanging at her throat, a talisman of hope. Then, through the half-light, a figure emerged, bathed in hues of twilight, the familiar silhouette sending tendrils of warmth spiraling through her chest, igniting a spark she thought long extinguished. The moment hung suspended, as if the world itself paused to bear witness, and as their eyes met, Tilly felt something shift within her, fragile yet fierce, a flicker of belief igniting in the depths of her being. "I knew you'd come," she breathed, her voice trembling with newfound conviction as the first drops of rain began to fall, mingling with the tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. The air in the dimly lit library hung thick with the scent of aged paper and polished wood, a sanctuary for secrets and whispers where shadows danced across the spines of time-worn books. Leela leaned closer, her voice a soft but fervent whisper. "You know the truth, don't you? These stories deserve to be shared." The librarian, a woman of creased brow and heavy-lidded eyes, hesitated, her fingers lingering over the gilded title of a forgotten tome, a faint tremor of uncertainty flickering through her resolute demeanor. She glanced at Lila, whose fiery passion radiated like a beacon in the oppressive quiet, and for a moment the walls around her seemed to pulse with the weight of unspoken dreams. I believe in preserving the past," the librarian faltered, her voice thick with a mingling of fear and yearning. "But what if it's too dangerous?" A flicker of doubt in her heart ignited, a swirling tempest of obligation versus desire, and she could almost hear the muted echoes of lives entwined within the books, their stories begging for liberation. Lila's eyes sparkled with an unyielding hope. "But isn't it worth the risk?" The librarian's breath caught, the air crackling with an electric tension, as she stood at the precipice of an impossible choice, caught between duty and the allure of a world waiting to be awakened. The air crackled with anticipation, each heartbeat resonating with the stillness that enveloped the grand library, its towering shelves casting long shadows across the polished wood floor. Rows of anxious faces, lit by the flickering glow of overhead lights, leaned forward, a collective breath held tight in chests as their gazes riveted on the librarian, who stood at the mahogany podium, her fingers trembling slightly over the aged parchment. The faint rustle of a turning page punctuated the silence as a young boy whispered, "Please, just say yes." His voice barely more than a whisper, yet it sliced through the tension like a knife. She glanced up, her glasses perched precariously on the bridge of her nose, her eyes brimming with a torrent of emotions. Uncertainty mingling with resolve. The weight of 1,000 stories hung in the balance, their fates tethered to her decision. A distant clock ticked on, echoing in the expansive room, reminding everyone that time was slipping away, each second amplifying the gravity of the moment. This is our only chance," she finally breathed, her voice trembling but resolute, the courage in her heart battling against the fear of disappointing the eager souls before her. The crowd leaned closer, their hopes intertwined, waiting for fateful words that would either shatter dreams or ignite a spark of possibility. The musty scent of parchment and ink filled the air, mingling with the faint aroma of lavender that lingered from the librarian's old frayed shawl. She leaned closer, her voice a soft whisper between the towering shelves. "You think freedom is a gift, don't you? But for me, it was a curse." Shadows flickered across her face, highlighting the deep-set lines carved by memories long buried. As she spoke, her eyes glimmered with a mixture of nostalgia and sorrow, the flickering candlelight casting ghostly figures around them, almost as if the memories themselves were rising from the depths. As a child, I scurried about the grand halls of a mansion, my tiny hands dusting the gilded frames, my heart yearning for a taste of the world outside, she continued, her voice trembling. They called me a house elf, a playful term, but I wore it like a shackle. A shiver ran through her, and she paused, collecting her thoughts among the chaotic whispers of the past. When I finally glimpsed the horizon, I found not the joyous freedom I'd imagined, but a vast emptiness, where the weight of expectations suffocated. She sighed, the sound heavy with unspoken longing, as if the very books around them held the secrets of her soul. The musty scent of old parchment enveloped Lila as she sank into a well-worn armchair, her heart racing with the weight of her confession. Across the small wooden table, the librarian, Miss Bramble, leaned forward, her silver hair catching the warm glow of the flickering candlelight. "You feel like you're in a cauldron." "That pressure bubbling inside," she murmured, her voice a soothing balm against Lila's swirling thoughts. Lila nodded, her fingers tracing the edges of a faded book, each page a reminder of the expectations that loomed over her like a dark storm cloud. "It's like no one sees the cracks beneath the surface," she whispered, her voice cracking, the warmth of vulnerability flooding her cheeks. Miss Bramble's wise eyes sparkled with understanding, and she shared tales of her own days at Hogwarts, the weight of her own dreams and fears just as palpable. "Sometimes the magic lies in those cracks, in the stories we tell ourselves," she advised, her words wrapping around Lila like a comforting embrace. In that moment, the library faded away, the whispers of ancient spells mingling with the resonance of shared struggles. Lila realizing she wasn't alone in this tumultuous journey after all. With a sudden surge of courage, Tilly straightened her spine, the weight of unspoken words finally finding their escape. The air around her crackled, thick with unarticulated dreams and the scent of fresh rain lingering in the garden. Her pulse quickened, each heartbeat echoing her resolve as she cast a defiant look at the shimmering, glassy eyes of the crowd. "I want freedom," she proclaimed, her voice clear and resonant, slicing through the murmurs like a sharp blade. In that moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the ripple of her truth to unfold. "I deserve happiness," she continued, her heart racing as she felt the warmth of the sun breaking through the clouds, illuminating her face with a golden glow. Whispers of disbelief danced among her audience, but Tilly's spirit soared, each word infused with the fragrant promise of new beginnings. Her palms tingled, the ground beneath her feet solid and unwavering, as she stood, not just for herself, but for everyone else who had ever felt shackled by silence. A small nod of encouragement from an old friend stirred the embers of her courage, and with one final indomitable breath, she proclaimed, "No more shadows! It's time to live." The air crackled with a mix of tension and anticipation as Elena took a trembling step forward, heart pounding like a drum against her ribs. The bright lights of the stage framed her, casting dramatic shadows across her face that flickered like candle flames in the minds of the audience. "No, don't!" someone shouted from the back, a voice laced with desperation. But she was already lost in the moment, the world around her blurring into an unrecognizable haze. Then, as she turned to face the crowd, inhaling the scent of sweat and anticipation, a hush fell over them, a collective breath held tight, waiting. A flicker of doubt crossed her mind, but it was too late. She had already committed to this path, this revelation that seemed to shimmer just beneath the surface of her skin. What if they don't understand, she thought. But she pushed the fear down, deeper than the roar of the crowd. In that instant, she felt an electric connection, a shift that coursed through the audience like a wave, a shared heartbeat that echoed in the silence. "Show us," someone murmured. And with that simple demand, she felt the weight of the moment transform, the potential of what could happen next igniting her soul. The echoes of their footsteps faded against the damp stone walls of the abandoned castle, the air thick with the scent of mildew and old secrets. Shadows danced under the flickering glow of a single candle they had found, illuminating the anxious faces of Mara and Jonah, whose hearts raced with the weight of their unspoken fears. "We shouldn't be here," Mara breathed, her voice barely a whisper, as if the castle might hear them and awaken from its slumber. Jonah shook his head, his jaw set in defiance. "We have to find the truth, Mara. It's the only way to save her." Suddenly, a soft rustle echoed from the darkened corridor to their left, causing them to freeze, hearts pounding like war drums in their chests. The candle's flame flickered wildly, casting eerie shadows that seemed to swirl, mocking their bravery. "Did you hear that?" she asked, eyes wide, the warmth of reassurance slipping from her grasp. "It's just the wind," Jonah replied, forcing a laugh that felt foreign on his tongue, but deep down a chilling doubt gnawed at him. As they moved forward, the hairs on the back of Mara's neck prickled, an instinct screaming that they were not alone. And the darkness that lurked just beyond their sight held secrets far more dangerous than they could ever imagine. The wind howled through the cracked window, carrying the scent of rain-soaked earth and something darker, something that clawed at the edges of Sarah's mind. She stood in the dim light of the attic, shadows dancing around her, each whisper a reminder of the promises she had broken. With trembling hands, she reached for the weathered box tucked beneath the floorboards, the weight of secrets heavy in her chest. "You have to face it, Sarah," her brother's voice echoed, a ghostly reminder of the last night they spent together, when the world felt alive, ripe with possibilities, not burdened by regret. As she prized the lid open, a chill enveloped her, the air thick thick with memories, and her breath hitched. Inside lay the letters. His letters, filled with dreams of escape, ambition, and the tragic final confession that had sealed their fates. She traced the ink with her fingertips, her heart racing, each word a knife twisting deeper. "I had to do it for you," she whispered, the truth tearing at her throat. The walls seemed to close in, a suffocating embrace. And with every heartbeat, the looming threat of the past felt more real, more urgent. Time was running out, and she could no longer hide. A storm raged outside, wind howling like a wounded creature. But inside the dimly lit cabin, the air was thick with tension, palpable and suffocating. Clara's fingers trembled as she clutched the letter, its brittle paper whispering secrets she wished she could unhear. "You can't trust him," Thomas said, his voice low and urgent, each word heavy with unspoken fears. He leaned closer, the flickering candlelight casting shadows across his chiseled face, deepening the lines of worry etched around his eyes. Outside, the branches of the gnarled trees scraped against the walls, a sinister reminder of the chaos brewing in the dark. "We have to leave now, before it's too late." Clara's heart raced, caught between the desperation in Thomas's voice and the flickering. Feebly hoped that she could salvage what remained of her fractured family, the memories of laughter now tainted by betrayal. "But what about the others?" she whispered, her resolve wavering as ghostly images of their friends haunted her mind. A crack of thunder punctuated her uncertainty, and in that moment she felt the weight of the world crashing down on her shoulders, the choice between safety and loyalty stretching painfully before her. "We don't have time," he insisted, his grip tightening around her wrist, grounding her amidst the tempest. The air hung thick with the acrid scent of smoke, curling like a sinister serpent around the charred remains of the village. Alara crouched behind a crumbling stone wall, her heart pounding a tribal beat in her chest as she scanned the ruins, searching for familiar faces among the ashen debris. "Amos," she whispered, desperation tinging her voice. "Where are you?" The crackle of flames danced in the distance, a haunting symphony to her mounting dread. A low moan emerged from the shadows, pulling her attention, and she clutched her dagger, its hilt slick with sweat. Emerging from the smoky haze was an unfamiliar figure, cloaked in tattered rags, eyes wild with fear and desperation. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped, voice hoarse and trembling. "They're coming for anyone who remains." Ilara's breath hitched. She recognized the threat implicit in his words. The marauders wouldn't just burn the village, they would hunt the survivors like game. "I'm looking for my brother, Amos," she said, steel threading her voice. "I can't leave without him." The man's gaze softened, a flicker of understanding sparking amidst the terror. "Then we must move. Now. You won't find him here if you linger." With one last glance at the smoldering remnants of her childhood, Ilara stood, resolve hardening like the iron at her back. The hunt was far from over, The wind howled through the jagged cliffs, carrying a bitter chill that cut through Merrin's heavy coat like it was made of paper. She stood at the edge, the ocean roiling beneath her, waves crashing against the rocks with a violence that mirrored her heart's turmoil. "We can't go through with this, not now," Lucas pleaded, his voice barely audible above the chaos, desperation etched in the lines of his pale face. Maren turned to him, her eyes wide, searching his for a flicker of conviction. But all she found was fear reflected back at her. The sky darkened as clouds gathered, pregnant with storm, and the air crackled with tension, thick enough to choke on. "What if they find out?" she whispered, her voice trembling, not just from the icy wind, but from the weight of their secret. Lucas took a step closer, the salt spray misting their faces, his breath warm against her ear. "Then we do what we came here to do. No turning back," he urged. But doubt gnawed at her resolve, a relentless tide threatening to sweep her away. In that moment, she felt the ground shift beneath her. A tremor of heart and fate, the very essence of their choice hanging precariously in the balance. The wind howled through the jagged branches of the ancient oaks, their gnarled fingers clawing at the darkening sky as Ilara crouched behind the stone wall, her heart pounding like a war drum. Just beyond her hiding place, the faint sound of boots crunching on gravel sent chills down her spine. "You'll find nothing here," a voice sneered, slicing through the tension like a knife. It was Marcus, his face illuminated by the flickering of a lantern, shadows dancing across his features. She caught a glimpse of his smug smile, the very one that had betrayed their once unbreakable bond, now twisted with the promise of betrayal. "Where is she, Ilara?" he called out, his tone dripping with mockery. "Did you really think you could keep her from us?" The mention of her sister sent a wave of dread crashing over her, thick and suffocating. Every breath felt like a betrayal, each heartbeat a countdown to the moment when she'd have to reveal her hiding place or risk losing everything. The scent of damp earth mingled with the sharpness of pine, grounding her, reminding her of the stakes. Her sister's life hung in the balance. Clenching her fists, she whispered fiercely under her breath, "You'll never take her from me." The air buzzed with tension as Evelyn stood at the edge of the crumbling cliff, the ocean swirling violently beneath her, waves crashing like thunder against the jagged rocks. Her heart raced, not only from the fear of slipping, but from the weight of the decision looming over her. "You can't do this," Jonah pleaded, his voice hoarse yet edged with desperation as he inched closer, his eyes pleading for clarity, for understanding. The salty breeze whipped her hair across her face, mingling with the scent of damp earth and brine, pulling her deeper into the chaos of her thoughts. "I can't let them find it," she gasped, her breath catching as the realization struck like lightning. The artifact would not only reveal her past, it would endanger everyone she loved. This isn't just about me anymore. She could see it in Jonah's eyes. The flicker of fear, the reflection of their once unbreakable bond, now tethered precariously to this moment. As the ground beneath her trembled, a jagged piece of stone crumbled away, sending a cascade of pebbles tumbling into the abyss below. "Evelyn, please?" His voice broke, cracking through her resolve as the ocean howled in agreement, echoing the turmoil within her. The air was thick with tension, charged like the moment before a lightning strike, as the shadows lengthened across the abandoned warehouse floor. Sarah crouched behind a rusted steel beam, heart hammering in her chest, her breath coming in hurried gasps, the metallic tang of fear mingling with the scent of decaying wood and oil. Just ahead, the flickering glow of flashlights danced like fireflies, revealing the silhouettes of men clad in black, their voices a low murmur, punctuated by the clink of gear and the occasional snatch of laughter. "Did you see her? Think she's still hiding?" one asked, a cruel edge in his tone, while the others chuckled, the sound echoing off the graffiti-laden walls. Her gut twisted at their words. They were hunting her, every instinct screaming that she needed to move, to find an escape. Desperation clawed at her throat as she scanned the room, eyes darting from the exit to the shadows, calculating her next move. The weight of the small package she clutched tightly against her chest felt like a ticking time bomb, a reminder of what was at stake. "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Sarah," came a voice from behind, icy and familiar, sending a ripple of icy dread down her spine. She clenched her jaw, refusing to let them see her fear. The wind howled through the crumbled ruins, sending a shiver down Ilara's spine as she crouched behind the shattered remains of a stone pillar, her heartbeat a frantic drum in her ears. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and moss, the remnants of a storm that had rolled through just hours ago. A flash of movement caught her eye. A hooded figure, cloaked in shadows, gliding across the debris-strewn courtyard. Every step deliberate, every breath ghost-like in the cool night air. "What do you want, Alaric?" she called, her voice steadier than she felt, though her fingers trembled as they gripped the hilt of her dagger. The figure paused, and for a heartbeat, Elara thought she saw a flicker of surprise, then recognition. "You shouldn't be here, Elara," he replied, his voice low, threaded with urgency. "Not after what you've uncovered." The words hung between them, heavy with unsaid truths. She could feel the weight of the amulet hidden beneath her shirt, its warmth pulsing against her skin, a reminder of the power she'd stumbled upon, the kind that could reshape their world or destroy it. His eyes narrowed, shadowed, yet piercing. "If they find you, it won't just be your life at stake," he warned, taking a step closer, the tension crackling like static in the air. "It's far worse than you can imagine." The wind howled through the narrow alley, carrying the sharp scent of rain-soaked pavement as Elara crouched behind a dumpster, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest, each beat a reminder of the ticking clock. Just ahead, the dim light flickered from an old street lamp, illuminating a gathering of figures cloaked in shadows, their hushed voices laced with urgency. "He must not find out one whispered, their tone heavy with fear, as if a name unspoken hung dangerously in the air. Nara strained to catch every word, a bead of sweat tracing down her back, mingling with the cold droplets that began to fall. What could they possibly be discussing that warranted such secrecy, such dread? Her breath quickened, each inhalation a battle against the rising tide of panic, as she shifted her weight to get a better view. "We can't keep this from him any longer," another voice urged, trembling, almost breaking. "If he learns the truth, it will be the end of us all." As Elara's pulse raced, thoughts of her brother flashed through her mind. His safety, his future, a painful knot tightening in her gut. She inched closer, the cold metal of a hidden knife pressing against her hip, a stark reminder of the choices she'd have to make, choices that could shatter everything she held dear. The air crackled with tension as Clara stood at the edge of the crumbling cliff, her heart racing like a wild stallion, the wind howling in her ears. Below, the churning sea roared, waves crashing against jagged rocks, sending up sprays of icy salt water that kissed her cheeks. A stark reminder of the peril she faced. Behind her, a voice sliced through the chaos, urgent and tethered with desperation. "Clara, don't! It's a trap!" Marcus's eyes, wild with fear, darted between her and the shadowed figure emerging from the woods, his silhouette barely visible against the encroaching twilight. Clara's pulse quickened, the scent of earth and pine mingling with the salty air as she weighed her choices. The world narrowing to the sound of her own breathing. A figure stepped forward, a grin playing on their lips, a familiar face twisted by betrayal. "You thought you could escape that easily?" they called, their voice smooth and taunting, igniting a fire of rage within her. Time seemed to warp, the stakes escalating. She could feel the cliffs crumbling beneath her resolve, the shadows of her past creeping closer, urging her to make a choice that could shatter everything she had left. "I won't let you win," she whispered fiercely, her hands balling into fists as the sea below surged with a newfound ferocity. The thunderous echo of the door slamming reverberated through the cavernous hall, the sound swallowed by shadows that clung to the walls like whispered secrets. "You don't understand." Clara breathed, her chest heaving, fingers trembling as she gripped the edge of the table, splintering the wood under the pressure. Across from her, Elias's eyes, usually warm and inviting, now glimmered cold as steel, his fists clenched, veins pulsing with barely contained anger. "I do understand," he shot back, voice low and fierce, "but you're being reckless." The scent of damp earth and old books filled the air, mingling with the sharp tang of fear that wrapped around Clara's throat, tightening with each passing moment. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows like a warning, carrying with it the ominous promise of a storm that mirrored the turmoil brewing within the room. "If we don't do this now, it will be too late," she insisted, her voice cracking, vulnerability seeping through the crack of her fierce resolve. She stepped closer, the flickering candlelight casting ghostly shadows that danced around them as if they were trapped in a world of their own making. The very fabric of their fates intertwined with the choice that lay before them, heavy with unspoken consequences. The wind howled through the trees, a mournful sound that echoed the turmoil swirling within Clara's heart as she knelt beside the crumbling altar, its stones slick with rain and shrouded in a veil of mist. She could taste the damp earth on her lips, feel the weight of the shadows pressing in, every instinct screaming for her to flee. Yet she remained, drawn deeper into the forest's embrace. "If you're here, show yourself," she called, her voice shaking, mingling with the rustle of leaves above, while a chill wormed its way down her spine. Suddenly, a crackle of branches broke the silence, and the figure emerged, cloaked in darkness, eyes glinting like shards of ice in the pale light. "You shouldn't have come," it whispered. A voice smooth, yet laced with malice, swirling around her like the very fog that enveloped them. Panic surged as Clara's mind raced. Her sister's fate hung in the balance, a fragile thread she had come to sever. "Where is she?" she demanded, trembling. But the figure simply smiled, revealing a flash of sharp teeth. "Answers come at a price, sweet Clara," it taunted, circling her slowly, every word thick with danger. The air crackled with tension, and she knew, without a doubt, that the true battle was just beginning. The wind howled through the cracked windows of the abandoned theater, whispering secrets lost to time as Mara crouched behind a tattered velvet curtain, her heart pounding in her chest, the acrid smell of mold and dust thick in the air. Shadows flickered along the faded stage, memories of applause and laughter echoing in her mind. But tonight it was a stage for nightmares. She could hear them, the footsteps, heavy, deliberate. "I know you're in there, Mara," a voice called out, smooth yet edged with menace, reverberating off the walls like a haunting melody. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end, the reality of her situation collapsing around her like the crumbling plaster above. She pressed herself deeper into the darkness, her fingers trembling against the cool, rough fabric of the curtain, the weight of the old fears rising within her, threatening to suffocate. "You always thought you could outrun your past," the voice taunted, closer now, a sinister undertone creeping into each syllable. Mara's breath came in shallow gasps, her mind racing, plotting, searching for a way out, because this time it wasn't just her secrets at stake, it was her very survival. The ghosts of the past clawing back to reclaim her. "I'm not afraid of you," she whispered, though doubt gnawed at her resolve as the footsteps stopped and silence enveloped the room, thick and suffocating. The crackle of thunder echoed ominously in the distance as Clara crouched behind the gnarled oak, her heart hammering against her chest, a drumbeat of dread. Raindrops, heavy and relentless, splattered against the ground, turning the earth to mud, while the scent of wet leaves filled the air, sharp and invigorating, yet tinged with despair. She could hear them, Shouts rising and falling like the swell of the tempest, the hunters drawing nearer, their voices laced with both urgency and menace. "Did you see where she went?" A voice cut through the rain, sharp and demanding, sending a shiver down her spine. Clara pressed her back harder against the tree, her breath hitching as she imagined their faces twisted with determination, obscured by the shadows cast by the storm. The flicker of a lantern cut through the curtain of rain, illuminating the underbrush just a few feet away. Panic clawed at her throat, and she fought the urge to bolt, knowing that motion could betray her. I can't let them find me," she whispered to herself, the weight of her secret pressing down like the oppressive sky above. But as the wind howled, carrying their voices closer, a new worry wormed its way into her mind. What if they found the truth before she could escape? The wind howled, a mournful cry that echoed through the desolate valley, carrying with it the scent of impending rain and something far more sinister. Just ahead, beneath the gnarled branches of an ancient oak, a flicker of movement caught Mia's eye, her heart pounding as she took a cautious step forward. The air tingled with tension, a silent warning that prickled at the back of her neck. "Did you see that?" she whispered, but the only response was the rustling leaves, whispering secrets. Only the wind could understand. Suddenly a shadow broke free from the underbrush, a young boy, his eyes wide with fear, mud smeared across his cheeks. "They're coming!" he gasped, his breath visible in the chilled air, the weight of his words hanging heavily between them. "They found me!" Mia's pulse quickened, the urgency in his voice igniting something deep within her. "Who?" she demanded, stepping closer, her instincts screaming to protect the innocent. "There's no time," he stammered, glancing over his shoulder, the desperation etched into his small frame. The distant, thunderous roar of footsteps echoed ominously, and an electric thrill of dread seized Mia's heart. She grabbed the boy's hand, the raw fear in his grip anchoring her as they plunged deeper into the shadows, racing against the encroaching storm of chaos. The air crackled with tension as the scent of smoke mingled with the heady aroma of earth, dampened by the recent rain. Shadows danced along the forest floor, flickering like anxious flames, while the distant howl of a wolf pierced the night. Clara pressed herself against the gnarled trunk of an ancient oak, heart thundering in her chest, each beat a reminder of the consequences. That loomed. "We can't just leave him, Clara," Leo hissed. Crouching low beside her, his knuckles white against the dark bark, his eyes, wild and fierce, scanned the darkness for any sign of movement. "What if he's already—" she started, but the words caught in her throat, the fear of the unknown clawing at her sanity. The last glimmers of daylight had disappeared, replaced now by a chilling mist that wrapped around their legs, whispering secrets of the forest's ancient power. The distant crack of a branch echoed ominously, a reminder that they weren't alone. "Listen," Leo urged, voice barely above a whisper. "We can't turn back now. We might be his last chance." Clara's resolve wavered as she glimpsed the flicker of a lantern in the distance, its light a beacon of hope, but also a potential trap. She took a deep breath, steeling herself, knowing there was no turning back from this path they had chosen. As the first drops of rain began to splatter against the cracked pavement, Sarah hurried through the dimly lit alley, the echo of her footsteps swallowed by the thickening fog. She glanced over her shoulder, heart pounding, each beat a reminder of the risks she took. The shadows felt more alive tonight. The scent of damp earth mingled with the sharp tang of metal, sending a shiver down her spine. "I shouldn't have come alone," she muttered to herself, wiping her clammy palms on her jeans. The alley twisted around her, a maze of looming brick walls and flickering streetlights that seemed to whisper secrets of their own. Suddenly, a low, gravelly voice cut through the stillness. "Thought you could sneak past, did you?" A figure stepped from the darkness, features obscured by the hood of a torn jacket, eyes gleaming with malice. Panic surged within her. This wasn't just a chance encounter. "I'm here for the package," she stammered, trying to sound braver than she felt. "I can't let it fall into their hands." A menacing grin spread across the stranger's face, and as he stepped closer, the rain began to pour, drenching them both, like the sky was mourning the choices they had yet to make. The air was thick with smoke, the acrid scent stinging Clara's nostrils as she crouched behind the crumbling brick wall, heart pounding like a war drum. Shouts echoed from the alleyway, mingling with the crack of distant gunfire, and the shadows danced ominously, flickering under the harsh glow of the burnt-out streetlights. Her brother's voice, tremulous yet resolute, pierced through the chaos. "Clara, we have to go now!" She could see him just a few feet away, desperation etched across his face, his hands trembling as he clutched a tattered map. "If we don't find the safe house before nightfall, we're done for," he urged, glancing nervously over his shoulder. The weight of her decision hung heavy, a gnawing dread coiling in her stomach. The streets were crawling with patrols, menacing silhouettes searching for stragglers like them. And with every second that ticked by, the noose of fear tightened. "Just a little longer," Clara whispered, her fingers brushing against the cool metal of the pendant around her neck, a talisman of hope. They needed a plan, a chance to reclaim their lives from the ashes of this desolation before the darkness swallowed them whole. "We can't give up now," she breathed, squaring her shoulders, ready to face whatever horrors lay beyond the wall. Rain fell in heavy sheets, drumming against the old tin roof, a relentless symphony that matched the turmoil within Mira's heart. She stood at the dilapidated doorframe, her fingers trembling as she clutched the crumpled letter, its ink smudged by the wetness of her trembling hands. "They're coming for him, Mira!" Her brother's voice echoed in her mind, urgent and edged with fear. The warning he had shared just days before, now looming like the dark clouds overhead. Lightning sliced through the sky, illuminating the shadows that danced around her, exposing the rotting wood of the porch where countless memories lay buried. The air smelled of damp earth and desperation, a poignant reminder of what was at stake. A thud interrupted her thoughts, loud and jarring, as her heart raced. Footsteps approached through the downpour, each one heavy with intent. "Mira," a voice called, fierce yet familiar, and she turned to see Emilia, soaked to the skin, her eyes wide with panic. "They found us! We need to go, now!" The urgency in her tone cut through the chaos. Amira's gut twisted with dread. They had mere moments before the past would catch up to them, perhaps forever changing the course of their lives. The rustling leaves whispered secrets as Clara stepped deeper into the forest, her breath quickening with each cautious footfall. Shadows danced between the towering oaks, their gnarled branches reaching like skeletal hands, while the sun's fading light cast an eerie glow over the underbrush. Just ahead, the sound of splintering wood echoed, sharp and jarring against the tranquil hum of nature. Heart racing, she paused, straining to catch a glimpse of the commotion. "Is someone there?" she called, her voice trembling, swallowed almost immediately by the dense silence that followed. A low growl reverberated, sending icy tendrils of fear slithering down her spine. A moment later, a figure erupted from the thicket, eyes wild and filled with desperation. It was Max, breathless and smeared with dirt, his shirt torn at the sleeve. "Clara, we have to go, now!" He grabbed her arm, urgency lacing his tone. As he glanced over his shoulder, fear etched in every line of his face. "They're coming!" The weight of his words settled heavily in her chest, and suddenly the forest felt alive, thrumming with the promise of danger, the stakes higher than she ever imagined. Panic surged as she followed him, the chill of the unknown pressing in like the encroaching twilight. The thunderous roar of the crowd danced through the damp air, their cheers mingling with the acrid smell of gunpowder and sweat. Adrenaline coursed through Elena's veins as she sprinted down the makeshift corridor, the sound of her footsteps echoing against the cold concrete walls. Shadows flickered in the dim light, each corner a potential threat, her heart racing with the knowledge that time was slipping away. "We have to move. Now," she gasped, urgency lacing her voice as she glanced back at Marcus, his face pale, eyes wide with fear. Behind them, the clattering of boots grew louder, menacingly relentless, and she felt the weight of their mission pressing down on her, a pulse of dread that twisted in her stomach. "They're right behind us!" Marcus shouted, his breath hitching as he stumbled, grazing his knee against the jagged floor. The sight of blood, warm and vibrant against the grey, sent a wave of panic through Elena. "Get up, we can't stop!" she urged, her own voice trembling as a sudden crash echoed through the hall, splintered wood and dust swirling in the air, igniting an instinctive fight-or-flight response. They had come too far to fail, but the looming threat of capture clawed at her. Every second a gamble in a game where the stakes were unforgivingly high. The wind howled through the narrow alley, carrying with it the scent of rain-soaked asphalt and something far more sinister, a metallic tang that sent shivers down Maya's spine. Shadows danced along the brick walls, flickering in the dim light of a lone street lamp. Beneath it, she spotted the glint of a knife, its blade catching the briefest flash of illumination before being concealed by a hand that trembled, perhaps from fear, perhaps from anticipation. "I didn't want it to come to this," the figure rasped, voice low and gravelly, a stark contrast to the soft patter of the rain overhead. Maya's heart raced, each beat echoing within her ears, a frantic drum urging her to flee, yet her feet felt rooted to the ground. "You don't have to do this," she whispered, her voice steady though her insides churned. But as she shifted her weight, her foot splashed down into a puddle, sending a ripple through the stillness, and the figure flinched, eyes narrowing with suspicion. The stakes had never felt higher, with a choice between life and betrayal hanging in the air, like the thick fog that cloaked the night. And in that moment, the alley seemed to pulse with secrets, every raindrop a reminder of the truths they both desperately wanted to ignore. The wind whipped through the narrow alley, carrying the acrid scent of smoke and something sweetly rotten, as Ilara pressed her back against the damp brick wall, heart hammering in her chest. Shadows slithered around her, dancing in the flickering glow of a nearby lantern, and she could hear muffled voices, urgent and low, spilling from the cracked doorway beside her. "If we don't move now, she'll be lost to us forever," a man rasped, his tone edged with desperation that sent chills down her spine. Eliara's fingers curled around the hilt of the dagger, hidden beneath her cloak. The cold steel, a comforting weight against her skin, even as a pang of doubt gnawed at her resolve. "Are you ready?" A voice broke through the tension, soft yet commanding, and she recognized it as Kellen's, though his eyes held a storm brewing beneath the surface. They had come too far, sacrificed too much, and yet the stakes had risen, like flames licking at the edges of their plan. Ilara could see the flicker of dread in Kellen's gaze, the way it darted toward the door that loomed ahead, a gateway to their greatest fear. "We have to trust her," she whispered, though uncertainty gnawed at her insides. What if they were walking into a trap? The air crackled with tension, each heartbeat a countdown to a decision that could unravel everything. The tension in the air crackled like static electricity as Marla stood at the edge of the forest, the fading light casting long shadows that danced between the gnarled trees. She could hear the distant clicks of cicadas, each sound a reminder that time was slipping away. She had only until dusk to find the key, and with it, the fate of her brother. "Marla!" a frantic voice called from behind, slicing through her focus. It was Ian, his eyes wide with urgency, sweat beading his brow. "They're coming. We have to move." Her heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat of desperation. The wind whispered secrets among the leaves, and for a moment she hesitated, anxiety clawing at her throat. What if she didn't find it in time? "I can't leave him," she murmured, her voice barely rising above the rustling branches. Ian stepped closer, urgency etched in every line of his face. "If you want to save him, we need to go now. We can't let them catch us." The sound of heavy footsteps shattered the stillness behind them. a reminder of their relentless pursuers, hunting them like prey. Marla's breath hitched, and with one last glance at the shadowy depths of the forest, she turned away, resolve hardening like steel within her. She wouldn't let fear dictate her actions. Not now, not ever. The air crackled with tension as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement of the abandoned warehouse. Inside, the stench of mildew mixed with a metallic tang, every corner cloaked in trembling darkness, where echoes of past confrontations lingered. A soft rustle broke the stillness, and Mia's heart raced as she edged deeper into the shadows, clutching the scrap of paper with the coordinates tightly in her palm. Her fingers trembled, not just from fear, but from the weight of what lay ahead. "If you find him, don't bring him back," a voice warned, hauntingly familiar, and suddenly every step felt like a betrayal. "Wait," she whispered, catching her breath, her pulse hammering in her ears. "What if they're right?" A faint scuffle echoed from the back of the warehouse, and Mia's stomach dropped. She wasn't alone. A flash of movement, then a figure emerged, cloaked in darkness, eyes glinting with a mixture of desperation and menace. "You shouldn't have come here," he hissed, the threat dripping from his words. And in that moment, the coordinates in her hand felt like a noose tightening around her neck. She swallowed hard, steeling herself. "I have to know the truth."